Okay guys, I'm going to take you through a solo drill routine now. You can use this as a warm-up when training or before competition. Okay, it's comprised of purely Jiu-Jitsu movements. Okay, so when you're using this stuff to warm up, you might as well be doing something that benefits your Jiu-Jitsu at the same time. There's no point doing movements to warm up the body, increase flexibility, when you could be doing a different movement that improves your Jiu-Jitsu and makes those fundamental skills much more stronger and gives you a better foundation for your Jiu-Jitsu. So, you know, rather than running around the room doing press-ups, sit-ups, things like that, it's far more beneficial to do movements that have got a context in Jiu-Jitsu, and then when you're doing these movements, you're strengthening the foundations of your techniques, okay? Okay, so let's get into the first movement. So the first movement we're going to look at, so we're going to go down onto our backs. We want to get our elbows against the body, okay? So the elbows in Jiu-Jitsu, most of the time we want to keep them to our body. This keeps our elbow joint away from the person. It stops it being exposed to things like arm bars. So we keep those nice and tight to the body, okay? So those arms should be in there. In Jiu-Jitsu, you often hear it being referred to as T-Rex arms because the arms are tight to the body. Next, I want to take my hands, I just want to place them either side of my neck. Okay, this is used to block chokes. You know? So this can be used to block a choke from the front or the back, and just by covering the neck area. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is bring my feet very close to me, and this allows me to lift my hips as high as possible. So what I'm going to do is lift the hips up and down, just lifting like that. And this just purely trains the extension of the hips. The context of this move could be used for finishing an armbar, perhaps, among many other uses. Okay. The next move we're going to do is one of our main foundational movements. It's called bridging. Okay. A bridge, generally, there's various types, but most the bridge you're going to use predominantly is going to be to the side. Okay. So I'm going to bridge up to this side. So I'm going to take the weight now, starting back from that same position we were in a minute ago. I'm going to bridge the weight onto my shoulder and reach across. I'm going to come back and reach across the other way. Okay. When I'm doing these movements, it's good to visualise how you'd actually be using them in an actual context. So for this one, I'm visualising in side control, and I'm moving and just moving the person's head off this main line over to here. So the weight stays on my feet and my shoulder, and I bridge up like this. And I come down and I'll bridge up again over to the side. I want to get my hips nice and high up off the floor, but I also want to be moving to the side. A bridge isn't just going straight up and down. Okay, that's just a hip extension. From here, look, I'm bridging sideways. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. From there. Okay. The next movement we're going to do is going to be a continuation of that bridge. So from here now, I'm going to bridge up, but this time I'm going to keep going this way all the way over to my knees. So as I come up here, I'm going to transfer that weight to my inside leg, pivot on the ball of my foot, and just turn over to my knees, tucking my elbows inside the thighs. Okay. So from here, I'm going to come up, transfer the weight to the inside leg, turn over, knees go wide, I'm going to tuck my elbows deep inside my thighs. Doing a habit of closing up that gap in the case that somebody had come over on top and was trying to put hooks in. Okay, so I want to keep that gap nice and tight from my back being taken in that particular instance there with the gap that could be opening up here. So this wants to be nice and tight. Okay, so I'm going to do that side to side. So up, 1, back, go the other side, turn over side to side. Okay. Next movement I'm going to do, I'm going to combine that bridge now with what we call a shrimp. So I'm going to bridge up, and this time rather than keep going this way, I'm going to do what we call a shrimp. I'm going to fold my body backwards and extend. Okay, I extend my arms and legs straight, and I'm pushing off the floor with my feet, and my weight is divided between my shoulder and my feet, and that means when I do that bridge, my hips are free off the floor to move back and forward. So I turn and bridge, the weight's up on my shoulder, I now turn my hips back, slide them away, fold my body in half, straighten my arms and my legs. Because we want to do this particular shrimping motion as a static movement, staying on the same spot on the floor, I now move my hips back to my feet. When we're doing this movement on the move, we'll be bringing our feet to our hips, which will move us across the mat. For now, my hips are going to go back to my feet, I slide back onto my back. I'm now going to go the other way. I'm going to bridge up, push and extend, fold the body in half and move my hips. So in the context of a movement, if somebody was on side control on me, I've moved their weight off to the side, because I don't just want to lift their weight up. If I drop down, it comes back onto me. So I move that weight to the side, I then turn and move myself away from them, creating space. Now my frames are in place, I can come back into that space and reclaim the guard. Okay, so look up, back, here, bridge up, and you want to bridge up as high as possible, and you want to turn and almost invert to the floor. That way your hips move back further and you can create more room. You don't just want to come up and just lift and slide like this. Yeah, you just want to people do this and they're just turning a little bit. You want to turn almost like your face, just about to face down towards the floor. So you're sort of at this sort of angle to the floor, almost 45 degrees to the floor, and you just slide back. You come in, again, pushing up, sliding back. Okay. The next movement we're going to do is adding on 2 pieces to this movement. So I'm going to bridge up, moving them off. I'm going to slide back, going away from them. Now this time, rather than coming back to guard, I'm going to go underneath to my stomach and come up into a turtle position. So the third movement I'm going to add on to that, after the bridge and the shrimp, is simply scissoring my leg backwards underneath and rolling flat to my stomach. So I scissor my bottom leg backwards, down to my stomach, grab an imaginary leg, pull my knees up, tuck my elbows deep underneath my thigh. Okay. On the other side, I bridge up, movement 1, movement 2, shrimp, movement 3, leg scissor. Once my stomach's flat on the mat, I grab an imaginary leg and come up here. Don't confuse this with the movement we did a few movements ago, which was this movement. We're going to go straight to the knees. Okay, that's more for like a mount escape here, where you're coming over onto the person. When the person's across side from you and you do that, if you try to come up to your knee, often they just knock you back onto their back. With this movement, it's important that we go flat to our stomach. When you're flat on your stomach, it's very hard to be rolled onto your back. From there, you can grip the person, stop them spinning to the back, and then we just do what's can be known as back hoisting, just bringing the back up off the mat. Okay, so we've got a bridge, a shrimp, a leg scissor, and then a back hoist, and we're into the turtle position there. Okay, so these are movements using your hips and shoulders on the ground to create angles, create space, and get back to a better position. Okay, next we're going to look at how we get back up from the ground. Okay, so it could be a case that we're in a standing position, we've been put down to the floor, and we want to get back up. What we're going to do is create a frame. Okay, so it's called known as technical stand-up. I'm going to create a frame with my foot and my opposite hand. Opposite hand, opposite foot. That'll make your frame there. This now frees up this hand and this opposite leg. So opposite hand, opposite leg free, opposite hand, opposite leg on the floor. Using this foot and this hand, I can elevate my hip off the floor freely. What I need to do next, though, is replace this post here. If I'm down on the floor and I'm like this, and somebody pushes me, I go back and land back on the floor. So when I put this hand behind me, this stops me getting pushed down onto the floor from here. Okay, this is a post, stops me going back. Now that's in place, I can lift my hip, someone can push into me, push off my hand, and I'm not going to go over. But what I need to do before I can stand is replace this hand with this foot. If I just step shallow and someone pushes me, as I take my hand off, I'm going to fall back down. So what I need to do is lift, take my foot back just past my hand or a little bit further, and now from there when they push into me, the foot is now doing the job the hand was. It's like a grip and replace, okay? And from there, I just take my hand off the mat and I can stand up. The whole time I'm going to be looking at my hand, and I sit through to this side and I go back again. When I come back down, it's important I put my hand down first before I slide my leg through and sit. If I put my leg through and put my hand down, I could hurt my wrist, okay? So as I do that, the hand goes down and it comes through. I switch sides, and now we'll do this side to side. We come up, and the whole time I'm looking at that front hand, because that's where my opponent's going to be. They could throw a kick, a punch from here, come in. I'm making sure that that frame's extended, giving me space to then freely operate behind it. And as I said with this movement here, it's like grip and replace. A lot of time in Jiu-Jitsu, when you see movements, and I think of it like climbing a rope. Yeah, you take the first grip, then only when you took the second grip do you let go of that first grip. It's the same with a lot of our movements. Only once this is replaced with this foot do I then safely take this hand up.
and we're back in that position, okay? So that's our technical stand-up. So we just looked at technical stand-up, which is a way to get back to the feet when you're on the ground. Now we're going to look at how we safely go from the feet to the ground, okay? So we use a technical stand-up to come up, maybe somebody knocks us back onto the floor, okay? This is called break falling, okay? So what we're going to work on here is how to fall safely to the ground, okay? When I fall down, I want to disperse the impact of my fall out, okay? As I come down, I'll be using the arm to disperse that force out, okay? If I just land on my back, slide down on here, my body takes all of that impact in one place, yeah, and it can cause injury, okay? And it can also be painful, it can wind you, you know, make it feel hard to breathe. So we need to disperse that force out to avoid it doing any internal damage, to avoid it from pushing all the air out of our lungs. So what I do is my arms sort of out at this kind of 45-degree angle. You don't want the arm up here, it doesn't disperse as much force. It's kind of taking impact more at my shoulders but not the body. If I come down here and kind of meet it halfway, I can disperse all the impact. And you want to time that slap with the impact of your body. So as your body comes down, that slap happens at the same time and disperses the force out. Okay? And the slaps from the fingertip to the shoulder. Don't come down and put your wrist out, you'll hurt your wrist, as we covered earlier in the return from the technical stand-up. Don't get in a habit. It's a natural body reaction. When you fall, you want to put your hand out, and that's how you're going to hurt your wrist. Okay? Don't, for now, do this either to the forearm. That's okay for stopping, you know, sweeps that aren't from a very high height, to stop your head going lower than your opponent and able to maybe still scramble and keep the top position. That's a different subject. For now, when practicing break falling, we just want to start off going from the shoulder to the fingertips. So when you fall, let your whole body come down and slap there with a flat arm. That slap will disperse that impact out. I mean, your body takes less impact. Coming down into position, when you're first starting to learn it, you can either start just from seated and just fall onto your side. So from here, you can just fall down and practice slapping, okay? Knees here in this position. This foot fits the floor and you want to keep your knees apart, okay? You do not want your knees together. Okay, for guys, this could cause an impact problem as you come down here and come down with the knees together. It's going to cause injury in the groin area, okay? So the knees want to be apart when you're doing this. It's better for fixed position anyway, and it also means someone comes down and can't squash your legs together and start passing your guard. The knees apart here, this leg out flat, this hand down in a straight line, okay? So you can start off, if you haven't done this before, you're not confident doing it from standing, just start off here, and you can go side to side, like this. The next step can be to go from that flat position, just go from a squat. So you can go from a very low squat and just kick your leg out and pull to the side, one side, and then to the other, okay? You can then go from a low squat to a slightly higher squat. You can then go from sort of a high squat to maybe just a slightly seated position. And when you get more comfortable, you can go from fully standing. So I usually just swing a leg across, bend this knee and start to sit towards the floor, fall onto my side and time that slap with the impact of the body. That's a side break fall, so when you turn, you want to turn to your side. It's not a backwards break fall. If you're going to be on your back, you may as well use both hands and disperse that force out over an even wider side. Okay, so with a backwards break fall, when I'm coming down here, I'm using two hands. When I do a backwards break fall, it's important I connect my chin to my chest. That stops me hitting my head on the floor when I go backwards. It's also important I don't rock my legs too far past the belt line, because even if I've got my chin stuck to my chest, I could still hit my head then. Okay, so I want to come down into the position and try to keep my legs back this way and my chin tucked there. Arms are slapping out at a 45-degree angle. And again, from here, what I can do is start very low. I can even start from seated. Practice a few of those. Go from a low squat, from a high squat, seated sort of position, and I get used to doing it fully standing. When I do it from fully standing, I usually just take a few steps forward, sit down. As I sit, come down onto the back, and you time that double slap with it. Okay, so that's break falling. We can use this in the context of a warm-up in combination with our technical stand-up. You can go through that and cycle through that, okay? Okay guys, so the next movement is going to be teaching us how to roll, okay? How to roll forward and backwards. In Jiu-Jitsu, you always want to roll over your shoulder, okay? You don't ever want to roll over your head, you can damage your neck. In gymnastics, you see forward rolling talk like this with the head on the floor and roll over. Okay, that's not how we do it in Jiu-Jitsu, that's actually dangerous to do in this. Okay, when you've got people's weight on top of you and heads here, it's very dangerous and can cause injury, okay? So because we're dealing in the context of fighting and another person's weight on top of us, we have to do this differently, okay? Don't roll like that, you need to train that out, okay? When you roll, it's over the shoulders, so your head needs to learn to always get out of the way, and this is what this drill accomplishes. So from here, look, I'm just going to tuck down into a tight ball. I get my shoulder on the floor and my head out of the way. I'm going to push off my toes and just steer the weight of my hips directly over that line of my shoulder till I come forwards from there. Once I land in this position, I'm going to look straight back over the shoulder I came, and always go over the shoulder you're looking. Don't hesitate in mid-air and try and change direction and end up putting the weight into your neck and potentially injuring yourself. So from here, look, the feet go back over the shoulder, I turn my head, and now a lot of people get to here and they kind of get stuck. All you need to do is extend your feet and your toes that way, guide the weight over that shoulder. When I get to here, I then go over the other shoulder, I look back, and I'm teaching my body to get my head out of the way when I roll over, okay? And the next movement we're going to look at, guys, is shooting the hips in the air. This is important because when you're down from guard, a lot of time you want to attack things like arm bars, triangles, and you need to get your hips up to the person. A lot of people just stay flat on their leg and try and pull the person's head down to them. It's hard work and the person's resisting. You can always just shoot your hips up to them. It's much easier to get up there. So you want to combine a bit of pull on them with a posture break, but you also want to learn to shoot your hips up high. It will dramatically increase your submission rate from guard, okay, as well as potentially leading to sweeps as well. So from here, I'll start down my back. I want to keep my shoulders on the mat, okay? I'm just going to bring my feet off. I'm going to fire them up in a straight line and shoot my hips in the air. I'm going to try and keep my arms off as well and just kind of pull my elbows down a bit as I shoot up. A lot of people will do a little rocking motion to create the momentum. Don't do that to create the right core strength to be able to shoot these hips up. I want to keep the shoulders on the mat and we just rock from there, just stay on this position with the weight on my shoulders and just build in that strength in that area so you can shoot the hips up. Okay, so we're shooting those hips up and down in that position. Alright, so next we're going to look at a routine of stretches for Jiu-Jitsu. These are really important and makes your body more pliable and bendable, okay? When we're wrestling around on the floor, getting pulled around to all different positions, if your body is rigid and taut and stiff, it'll break at certain points, so you'll only be able to stretch your arm to here, so your opponent pushes it to there, now you're injured. If you've been stretching your arms over, go all the way back here, you're able to be folded around in positions without injuring yourself, yeah? So you need to think of this concept like a tree in the wind. It needs to be able to bend in the wind. If it can't bend, it can snap. So we need to build this flexibility into our body. The best stretch for this is just legs back over the head stretch. So from here, I'm just going to try and take my feet all the way down to the mat. If you can't get them that far and you can only get them to here, that's great. If you're struggling, keeping your weight back because your hips are falling forward. This is often the case with bigger guys when they first start. But you need to take your hands, place them on your back and put your elbows down in front of you here as a wedge. If it's too far back here, won't be as effective. You want them in front here and that will just hold you in position. And you just practice in this position, holding a position. A lot of people will say that they struggle with breathing in here. The best thing to do is as you bring the legs back, just breathe out and it'll help you to hold that position a bit better. Okay. Generally I hold this for about 30 seconds, then I'll go to one side of my head, so I'll take both legs one side of my head so I can look up. I'll hold that for another 30 seconds or so. I'll come over here, my head the other side, my legs the other side, hold that for 30 seconds or so. What I would do next from there is I will take the hand of the side that my head's out on and I'll just place it backwards and untuck in a backwards roll. I will then come down with my hips down and my head up, bending my body back the opposite way to I've just done. So I've bent it very much in this direction and now I'm stretching it back out in this direction, making myself bendable in both ways. So my hips go as low down to the floor as they can, the weight's on my hands and my legs here and I'm just stretching up with my head as much as I can, okay? So I'm just stretching up from there, keeping that extension there of the body. From there, I'm then going to move backwards. I'm going to bring my feet together, knees go wide, my hips are going to go back and very low so they touch my heels almost. My arm's going to go out straight and my head's going to go to the mat. And I'm going to hold this position again for about 30 seconds. So I'm just holding these in position. All these stretches are holding about 30 seconds each. I'm just getting that stretch into the body. You can shake the shoulders here as well and loosen those. From here, I'm now going to come forward with one knee and I'm going to step this foot over. I tuck this foot in tight and I step this foot on the back of my knee here. I'm now going to twist my upper body a different way to my lower body. My lower body's twisting that way. I'm going to twist my upper body this way. And so my torso and my legs are going in two different directions. So it's facilitating a twisting stretch of the body. My hand's going to come behind. I'm just going to stretch my arm out here. And just hold this again for about 30 seconds. While you're doing that, if you like, you can warm your arm up by circling it one way, circling it the other. You can warm the wrist up, circling that one way and then the other. You can open and close the fingers. Just bend at the knuckles, move the fingers independently and just warm the hand up that way. Just get it used to moving and get extending it. That's it from there. Then we switch position, we do it the other way. So from here now, look, I'm going to curl the foot back this way. But this way I'm going to twist my body the opposite way. Again, I'm going to hold it about 30 seconds. As you're breathing, as you breathe out, it's a good time to stretch further into it. After 10 seconds of holding these positions, you feel like you can stretch them further. And over time, you'll get much more flexibility. You always want to take a stretch to the point where you can feel it stretching you and it's slightly uncomfortable, but you want to stay away from pain. So if it starts to hurt, you need to back out of that movement a bit and go back into it until you're stretching, but it's not hurting. And over time, that stretch will become easier and easier and you get further and further into it. Again, from here, you can warm the arm up both ways, the wrist, the open and closing the fingers, bending at the knuckles, moving the fingers like that. We can move into that stretch, okay? From there, some other stretches just for the arms. From here, you can take the fingertips, pull them back. Yeah, you can do that on both sides. You can bend your wrists this way, get your wrists flexible, because people will be trying to do wrist locks. So from here, we can bend the wrists back in, okay? And we can get that position working from there. Some other good leg stretches, bring your feet in here and push down on the thighs. Yeah, this is good for butterfly guard and for spinners, slip hooks back into the guard retention. So I'm pulling here on the ankles, just pushing my elbows, just feeling that stretch. Again, I don't want to feel pain, I just want to feel a slight discomfort of a stretch from there. Another really good one I can do, just take my foot, pull it up here, bring my arm under, bring both arms under and just curl it towards my shoulder. Yeah, so I've got this straight bar of the leg and I can practice getting that higher and higher so I can get it completely over my shoulder and just sit here pulling this one in. Now, this can give you great flexibility for the guard. It's really good for things like rubber guard as well and high guard from here. So I'm pulling this one in and just stretching that into place there and holding that into position, okay? Okay guys, the next movement we're going to look at is another drill, shooting the hips up in the air. I tend to spread these two out, so rather than doing the straight one here and then this one, I tend to spread them out either side of the stretches. That way you don't get too much work on the core to once. If people do 10 of these, well, that time they then go to do 10 of the triangle ones, it's really struggling to carry on doing that movement correctly. So to keep the movement nice and correct and just for them to stop losing positioning, what I'm going to do from here is now do this separate after the stretches. So again, I'm going to shoot my hips up, but this time I'm going to do like a triangle over here. So I'm going to tuck my foot behind my knee and pull that foot down. I'm just going to pull up with my arms like I'm pulling down on the back of the head for the triangle. I'm going to switch it and do it on the other side. So from here, I'm shooting my hips up, catching that, and down, shooting my hips up. And again, I'm going to try and keep my shoulders on the mat for the whole movement. So I'm going to try and keep my shoulders down here, onto that position there, okay? Next movement we're going to look at is called inversion, okay? So this is a way of turning upside down. So someone could have their weight on you from here, and you turn up, you can even roll out, back to turtle, come down into guard. In the context of the drill we roll all the way through. Best way to learn this, start out, get onto your side. Your arm can be in here, it can be behind you, doesn't really matter, but you want your head really close to your knees. You're going to curl it into a ball. It's a bit like a shrimp, except we're not extended now. Everything's going to be curled into a ball position. From now I'm going to put the weight on my toes and my shoulders and just lift my hips up to here. When you're starting out, a good way to learn this is to go from side to side and just practice lifting those hips up. Once you're comfortable with that, Once you've lifted the hips up, what we're trying to do is take the weight from the shoulder on to the other shoulder. So I want to roll across the line of my shoulders. From here, it's really important, guys, that we curve our head underneath so it's not taking the weight. And we need to keep the weight of our hips a bit more forward so it's not putting the weight on there. The weight's now on the shoulders. And I simply step across, roll across that line of my shoulders and untuck on the floor. Okay, so from here, I'm now on here, I want to roll across this line. So I'm going to curl into a ball, lift my hips, going to just send my weight back a bit by pushing my toes so my hips go back. And I'm just going to walk across there, switching that weight from this, my left shoulder, to my right shoulder. And I'm just going to go through. From there we can go through, and round, through, and round into that position. So that's our inversion technique, very useful. You know, if you've got walls you can work with, you can do variations of this, or you go along the wall using it to invert along and back. Yeah. Got lots of uses, very good fundamental technique there that really builds upon your ability to jiu-jitsu, and you use it in lots and lots of movements, the same with all of these techniques. Okay guys, next we're going to look at shrimping on the move. Okay, so before we were doing the shrimping as a static movement where we came here, we came back to our feet, stretched out, hips went back to our feet. Now we're going to move our hips back and our feet are going to come to us, so we move across the mat. So we'll start at one end of the mat, turn to my side, I'll bridge, and I'll make sure I almost get that inversion position so there's a gap under my hips here. I'm going to extend my legs and stretch back. And now the only difference from before is I bring my feet to me, everything comes back in as I go flat on my back. I turn and now you can see that I'm moving across that mat. When I get to the end of the mat, I'll go back the other way, bridge up, and you want to always be turning down. Yeah, don't do it like this, just if you're doing this, just moving the hips. You want to train it that you want to create that gap, so you want to turn and move away from the person. If you're flat on your back, it's harder to move when someone's on top of you. You get on your side, your hips are free to move. So you want to bridge like this, up on the shoulders, stretch, bring the feet in, turn and stretch back, and now moving across the mat with that shrimp position. Okay. The next movement we're going to look at is a reverse shrimp. So a reverse shrimp is basically the opposite of a shrimp. In a shrimp I start on my back, turn onto my side. In this position we're going to start on our side. I'm just going to reach with the top leg down the mat and just pull on the mat. From here I'm going to slide my hips down and roll flat onto my back as I slide. So I'm going to go from my side onto my back, and this bottom leg comes through. So as I reach, I don't want to be too far up on my foot as my leg can't come through, and I don't want my leg extended, it won't fit. So I want this one down and this one curled back. And now as I slide towards there, come through. I'm not using my arms, I'm just using my pull of my foot and the sliding of my hips to slide there. When I get to here, I'll turn back round and I'll go back the other way. I'll turn, slide, turn, slide through. I'm moving up and down the mat, sliding through. This is training me to slide my hips back into position. So it could be that I shrimped out and this person moves around a bit, starts trying to pass around my guard. So I come in and I slide back underneath them, either into butterfly guard, open guard, or closed guard. Okay, so that's reverse shrimping. Okay, the last drill I'm going to look at for this solo drill routine, guys, is a double leg takedown drill. Okay, I'm going to divide this into two main movements. First movement is going to be a lunge step and a reach of the arms. The idea of this is that my opponent's here. As I step in towards them, I want to close that distance. Okay, so I'm getting closer to them. At the same time, in the second part of the movement, we'll be dropping down to attack the legs. If I drop down just to attack the legs and their arms are here, they come under, put the underhooks in, and they block the attack. So I want to bring their arms up. I want them to go like this with their arms, and their legs are wide open to be grabbed. So I'm going to step towards them, bring my arms to shoulder level. That will bring their arms up. When their arms are up, I now do a second part of our movement. I rock to the front knee and pull my hands in, symbolising grabbing the back of the knees. Once the back of the knees are grabbed, I simply step round, come up and repeat the movement on the other side. Okay, so from here, I'm going to step, drop, come through, then it would be repeated here. I'm going to turn around and do it this way. I'm going to step, rock to that front knee, step round, come through, and I'm up. I'll just repeat that side to side. So I'm here, stepping through into that position, okay? As I'm coming around here and dropping, This leg can either be used to catch the back of the heel and tip them over from here, or it can be used as a post to stand up and lift them and take them down. It's got multiple options, but when we drill it, we're in here, look into that knee. Remember that the drop into the knee is a mat technique, okay? It's useful for in class, it's useful for in competition, it's not good for the street. We don't want to be dropping down, smashing our knee onto concrete. In that context, we step in a low squat. Take the person down from here, or lift like this, so we stay in a low squat. But for now, we really want to train getting nice and low and underneath the person and closing that distance. So it's a great drill to get really smooth at that. So we're in here and we're stepping through. That's our double leg takedown drill, okay? Okay guys, so I'm now going to show you how to use this as maybe a warm-up routine before a competition or before doing some training, okay? I'm just going to use these movements sequentially. So I'm going to start from here, hip lifts. I'm going to go side to side bridging. All the way over to the knees. Bridge into a shrimp. Adding on the leg scissor and the back hoist. Into the technical stand-up. Adding on break falls. Forward and backwards roll. Shooting the hips up. Into the stretch. One side of the head. Other side of the head. Rolling out, hips coming down. Drawing back from there. Coming forward with one knee. Stretching the other upper body the other way. Switching position. Maybe warming the arms up at the same time. And the wrist and the fingers. Stretching the arms and the hands out. Bending the wrist back that way. Stretching the legs. And that one in. And from here, I'm going to start going into the shooting the triangles. So from here, and go into inversions. Shrimping on the move. Reverse shrimp. Double leg drill. Okay guys, so you have full warm-up routine, solo drill exercise. You can practice this slowly and really get those fundamental movements down. You can also do it a bit faster and use it as a way to warm up the body, get yourself warmed up for a training session or a competition. It's important to note, guys, that these drills, when they're used this way, they're really important for increasing your jiu-jitsu technique and making it better. They're not just warm-up movements, they're just going to get the blood pumping and circulate around the body and warm up the muscles. Practicing these regularly will make your jiu-jitsu better because they're the fundamental building blocks of your techniques. Most of these movements are very large concepts that you'll see in lots of techniques, things like the technical stand-up. You'll see that standing back up. You'll see it from different sweeps, collar drag sweeps, hip bump sweeps. All of these positions, you'll see them used in lots and lots of techniques. So it's really important to get all these movements exactly right. Same with the bridging, it's fundamental escape concept that's used all the time. You want to get really strong at those and get your technique correct. The more precise your technique is, the more effective it will be, okay? When we're getting precise technique, we're increasing the strength of our body by putting ourselves in a very beneficial position for us and unbeneficial position for our opponents. So following these movements and getting them very sharp and correct is really essential for getting our jiu-jitsu to be precise and effective. So don't discount them and think that they're just for warming up. These are really important to learn technically and get correct. So when you're practicing them, you're making your jiu-jitsu better. You're not just warming up the body. It's very important to apply that technical context to it and visualize what you're doing with these movements when you're going through the routine. Okay guys, thanks.